Hello students and welcome to another English Solutions for Business and Life video. You can always get in touch with us at EnglishSolutions at 001@gmail.com. Let's begin. Today we're covering Unit 7, Elementary Book, and we'll be looking at the vocabulary for this unit. Today we're going to be covering verbs in past, the regular form of them and their irregular form. Regular verbs. Okay, it's important to know two things. The first one is that they all have the same ending, and that ending is ed. The pronunciation is different. They are a little more difficult to pronounce, but we're going to give you some tips and some rules so you can pronounce them correctly. Before we continue, before we go into the pronunciation, let's start with spelling. Well, first off, it's important to remember that letters such as C, D, S, or H are consonants, and the vowels are A, E, I, O, U. Well, this is important because, alright, all the verbs that have the ending C, V, C, or consonant, vowel, consonant, when they are in their past form, we have to double the last consonant. For example, we have stop, we have consonant, vowel, consonant, and the result is stopped. And there's the double P. Okay. Now, all the verbs that have or end in Y, for example, study, we have to make some changes. We're going to remove the Y, we're going to remove it, and we're going to insert an I, and the result is studied. S-T-U-D-I-E-D, studied. And the rest of the verbs that do not follow this pattern, we're just going to introduce the E and the D, or only the D. Let's continue. Pronunciation. Rule number 1. Okay, all the verbs that have a vibrating ending, it is very important that you pronounce while you watch this video, while you're watching this video, because your pronunciation is really important when you express yourself in English, and the simple past is something that requires more practice than the rest. Okay, vibrating, and by vibrating ending, I mean the last sound the word makes. For example, play. Play. That sound is vibrating. Okay, when we have a vibrating ending, the pronunciation in the past will be a D sound, an American D or an English D, better said. Examples: play, played. Seem, seemed. Study, studied. Alright, as you notice, all these verbs have a vibrating sound at the end. I'm going to say one more time the verb in present and then the verb in past so that you can notice the difference. First, all the verbs in present. Play, seem, study. Okay, now the verb pronounced in past. Played, seemed, studied. Of course, I am making a little emphasis. I am exaggerating the sound on purpose, but this will require some practice until you get it right. Rule number 2. When there is no vibrating ending, we're going to end the verb or pronounce the verb in past with a T sound, like a T in Spanish, also a T in English. T. Okay? Verbs like liked, stopped, watched. Okay? The no vibrating sound is a little bit more difficult to identify, but it's not impossible to. The last sound in the normal form of these verbs, such as like, stop, and watch. Sorry. Okay, let's listen. Like, stop, watch. If you notice, these endings, the k, p, and ch, they don't have a vibrating sound in the end. That's why, when pronounced in past, the result will be liked, stopped, watched. One more time. I am exaggerating on purpose so that you can listen better. Now, rule number 3. All the verbs that have an ending in d or t sound, they will be expressed or pronounced with an id sound. Sounds funny. Okay. For example, we have, I'm going to write the verb in present for you. Visit, need, and complete. As you can see, the sound is visit, need, complete. When we have these sounds, we have to, let's say, pronounce it complete. Oh, complete. Yes, that's, many people understand it that way. For example, visited, needed, completed. Then again, it requires a little practice to identify the sounds, and of course, practice, and more practice. Alright, let's practice now. As you can see, all these verbs are in their present form, and I put them in different colors. The ones in pink are verbs that have no vibrating sound. The verbs in some kind of green are verbs that have a vibrating sound, and the ones in blue, in the bluish color, are verbs that end either on T or D sound. Now I'm looking at these, and all of them end in T sound. Anyways, let's practice. And let's try to identify, and you can see the difference. Okay, no vibrating sound. Reach, like, work. Now let's pronounce these verbs in the past form. Reached. The next verb, liked. The next one, worked. Okay, one more time. The sounds ch, k, or k, they all do not possess a vibrating. They do not vibrate in your throat. They don't vibrate. So that's why you need a t sound. The next ones, live, clean, and play. Let's listen to them in the present form. Live, clean, play. Now let's listen to them in the past form. Lived, cleaned, played. Alright, now the next three verbs, all of them have a t sound. For example, complete, plant, visit, visit, visit. Now let's listen to their past form. Completed, completed, completed. Planted, planted, planted. Visited, visited, visited. Okay, one more time. This requires a lot of practice, a lot of exaggeration, and a lot of paying attention to the sounds. Don't get desperate. This takes time. For some people, it's easier than for others. So, the more you practice, the better your chance of pronouncing these verbs correctly at all times. Let's continue. Let's practice a little bit more. I think that I thought that it wasn't just enough. Let's practice a little bit more. Please repeat after me. Liked, liked, liked. Played, played, played. Jumped, jumped, jumped. Watched, watched, watched. Washed, washed, washed. Cleaned, cleaned, cleaned. Planted, planted, planted. Completed, completed, completed. Needed, needed, needed. Let's move on. Okay, some examples. These verbs used in a complete idea, in a sentence. For example, we have, we visited Grandma last Sunday. We visited Grandma last Sunday. As you can see, as you heard it, the faster you speak, it's more difficult to identify the pronunciation. But it's there. We visited Grandma last Sunday. Number 2, she liked her present a lot. She liked her present a lot. One more time. Maybe it's almost unnoticeable. Maybe it's difficult to identify, but it's there. She liked her present a lot. There's a t sound in between. The last one, I studied for 5 hours last night. I studied for 5 hours last night. One more time. We have the pronunciation right there, but it's a little bit difficult to identify. To just to make sure that we see the difference, first I'm going to say the verb in present, the complete sentence in present, even though it is incorrect, and then I'm going to say it in past so that you can notice, you can see the difference. Present, we visited Grandma last Sunday. Past, we visited Grandma last Sunday. Number 2, she liked her present a lot. She liked her present a lot. As you can see, the difference is just very small, but it's there. Number 3, present. I studied for 5 hours last night. Past. I studied for 5 hours last night. Okay, so the sound is there. It takes a little while to identify and notice, but practice will lead you to a good English pronunciation. Right, let's move on. Now let's continue with the second part of this video, irregular verbs. Irregular verbs have there are some important things to mention about irregular verbs. The first one is that they don't follow a spelling rule. They do not end in ed. Yes. Another one is that it's necessary to memorize them. Maybe you do not like this idea, but it's a necessity. You need to memorize them because many of them completely change in their form from the present to the past. A third comment on these is that some have the same form in present and past. So in some cases, such as cut and cut, Just remember that it's an irregular verb, so its past form is the same as its present form. Some common irregular verbs are, please repeat after me if you have the chance. Buy, bought. Buy, bought. Buy, bought. Do, did. Do, did. Do, did. Drink, drank. Drink, drank. Drink, drank. Eat, ate. Eat, ate. Eat, ate. Go, went. Go, went. Go, went. Have, had. Have, had. Have, had. Know, knew. Know, knew. Know, knew. Write, wrote. Write, wrote. Write, wrote. See, saw. See, saw. See, saw. Run, ran. Run, ran. Run, ran. Cut, cut. Cut, cut. Cut, cut. Read, read. Read, read. Read, read. As you can see, they do not follow the same pattern. Some of them completely change. Some of them change a little bit, or one letter. Yes. Or some others even have the same spelling, but the pronunciation changes. As well as some others just stay the same. The more you study them, the more you memorize them, the more you know their meaning, it'll be much better. It will expand your vocabulary. Examples with verbs, irregular verbs in past. Number 1, I bought a car last year. I bought a car last year. In this case, pronunciation is not a problem because the difference between buy and bought is very big. Now, number 2, she drank too much coffee in the morning. She drank too much coffee in the morning. Just we notice that only one letter changes, but it's pretty clear that it's a verb in past. Number 3, they knew all the answers for the test. They knew all the answers for the test. They knew all the answers for the test. And then we have another verb in past, knew. Just remember that for this verb, the K is not pronounced. Let's recap a little bit on this. This was a very important unit for your English development. Why? Because the vocabulary we saw for this unit is verbs in past. All these verbs you will study from now on in pre-intermediate, intermediate, advanced, super advanced, mega advanced levels. It doesn't matter. Your regular verbs and irregular verbs have to be very good in spelling and pronunciation as well. So don't forget simple past and past, regular verbs in past and irregular verbs in past are really, really important in your English. They have to be one of your best strengths so that you can express yourself correctly in English. Regular verbs, they all end in ed. They have they're a little tricky when it comes to pronunciation. We have well, you can check that later. We have 3 rules. Rule number 1, 2, and 3. You can rewind the video if you want to check that out again. We practiced the pronunciation of them. We saw some examples. Irregular verbs, you have to memorize them. It's really important to memorize them. Study them as much as you can. Why? Because they change, sometimes completely, sometimes partially, sometimes only a letter. Sometimes they stay the same, and sometimes, I think that's the only case, but anyways, sometimes the pronunciation changes, even though the spelling is exactly the same. We saw some examples as well. Well, I hope that this video, well, a little longer than usual, but it's very important. Do not lose this video. Watch this video as many times as you see necessary, because verbs in past, both regular and irregular, are extremely important in your English. Okay, goodbye. See you in our next video.